welcome to Hotline 21. My name is Kesha Larkins, and I'm the Associate Director at Connections for Abused Women and Their Children. Joining me today is...
My name is Porscha Stevens, and I am the program coordinator for our Humboldt Park Outreach Program, as well as a family therapist, at CAWC as well.
So Connections for Abused Women and Their Children is Chicago's oldest DV agency. We provide a variety of direct services to victims of domestic violence, including emergency shelter, counseling, legal advocacy. We have medical advocacy at hospitals. We also do a lot of training and outreach. But the thing I really wanted to talk with Ms. Porscha about today was our children's services program. Before we get into that, I'm going to just give you a little bit of information. CAWC has a 24-hour hotline in which any person can always call to reach a trained domestic violence counselor advocate. And our 24-hour hotline number is 773-278-4566. And you can also get more information on our website, which is cawc.org. This show that you're watching right now is Hotline 21, and this is an interactive call-in show. So please feel free to call 312-738-1060 if you have any questions for me or for Porscha. All right, so Porscha, you said that you were the family trauma therapist and the HPOP coordinator at CAWC. What are some of the things that you do in that role?
So for the program coordinator, I kind of oversee the counselor advocates there. I oversee the interns, so we get interns who are bachelor's levels, and then we have interns who are master's levels, so I kind of oversee them, helping with our grants, funding, doing reports, a whole heap of things, honestly.
Yeah, you do a lot. You keep busy. So you work with the counselors. What do the counselors do at HPOP?
Okay, so our counselors at HPOP, so HPOP is a walk-in based agency. So anyone who is a victim and or survivor of domestic violence could walk into our program and just say, hey, I'm in this kind of a situation. I kind of need some support. So from there, if the counselor is available, and if they're not, then I'm usually the person they'll come to.
Yeah. That's part of your coordinator role,
yes? Yes, it is. So they can kind of just share their story with the counselor who's available, and from there they can kind of decide, maybe I need shelter, and then the counselor would kind of figure out a way to get them some shelter, some emergency assistance. If they're like, well, I've been out of this situation. Sometimes we do get people who have been out of their situations for a while, but they're still dealing with the aftermath of all of the trauma and the abuse. So then that's where our counselor advocates will come in and just kind of, do some crisis intervention work with them, do some short-term counseling services, so helping them achieve goals. So maybe some of their goals would be, I want to move out of state, or, I want to just be able to get back to myself when I was happy and healthy and, living a good life. So them and their counselor can kind of walk through that process too. They can, create we have service plans, so it's kind of like treatment goals. And with that, you have plans that kind of correlate to, emotionally, what would you like to work on? If it's finances that you would like to work on, then you can do that as well. So it usually depends on each individual person that kind of come into the agency to decide what it is that we'll provide or help them with.
Right. Yeah, I know that's an important point. CAWC is like a client based program. So the clients are always going to be in charge of kind of deciding what services they're interested in. I also like that you said that HPOP, or the Humboldt Park Outreach Program, is a walk-in program, because sometimes that's something people don't know. Our hours are 9 to 5, and people can always just come in and see a counselor. It is good to make an appointment if you are able to, but if you're not, you can always just walk into the program and someone would be available to see you, which is really great. Awesome. So that's a lot of coordinator responsibility.
Yes, so that's the coordinate aspect of it. And then just coordinate our holiday parties that we're going to be doing this year around, just helping with that. Doing some community outreach, so being able to go to schools or different agencies, Not only myself do I do that, but sometimes the counselors would do that as well. They'll go to maybe like some churches and speak, or some schools with me, different community-based agencies who want to learn a little bit more about it. And as far as my family trauma therapist account, I provide individual and group counseling and family counseling. So for individual, I see children. I think the youngest I've had so far was a 4-year-old. Well, she was 3, and then she had just turned 4. And then, so a wide range of clients that I usually see.
Yeah. So, what is it like working with child witnesses of domestic violence? Can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Definitely. So working with children who have witnessed DV is honestly it's challenging, but it's very much so rewarding. It's one of those things that you have to notice and you have to be aware of the child. So a lot of times we get referrals maybe from schools or sometimes the parents or family members and things like that who will say, my kid is, or this kid is acting out and acting aggressively. I don't know what to do. I don't know what's wrong with them. I don't know what's going on. Can you try to figure it out? A lot of times they're, seeing doctors and other physicians for diagnosis of ADHD, attention deficit disorder.
I hear that a lot. That ADHD or ADD is kind of used as a kind of default diagnosis for any child that kind of has any behavioral issues.
Yes.
And sometimes the doctors are not kind of taking into account the possibility that the child experienced some type of trauma, whether it was witnessing domestic violence or something else. So yeah, I could definitely see how that would be challenging.
Definitely, especially when, and you would think, and not to discredit them because I'm sure that they're doing their job, but that there would be some type of screening that could kind of go fully into, is this trauma related or is this truly, I have this disorder, and most of the time it's the trauma.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point that probably a lot of the symptoms would be similar, right?
Yes.
Like a child who's experienced trauma may exhibit similar behaviors to a child who has ADHD or ADD.
Definitely.
So it's so important to have someone like you as a family trauma therapist or a counselor advocate or another type of counselor who's able to kind of look into sort of the root cause of that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And then a lot of times, too, is that they do get the children who are acting out aggressively, whether it's physical, verbal. They have a difficult time engaging with peers, so sometimes it can be simple. Well, it's not simple, but it can be them, I'm isolating, as far as the kid, they'll isolate, or they can be overly engaged with other children and sometimes even adults. And for me, that's something that's kind of concerning. So when I see that happening or when I hear that kind of thing in the referral process, it automatically say there's something else that's either going on presently or that has happened in the past to get them to the point where they are acting out or isolated and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've already kind of touched this a little bit, but what are some of the ways that domestic violence impacts children?
That has a huge impact on children.
Yeah.
A lot of times we hear that, oh, my kid is a newborn, so the DV has no impact on them, or my child was in another room, so they didn't really hear what was going on, and it has no impact on them. But the reality of it is that they do have it does impact them. The younger the child, the more of an impact that it has on them, because children, they're developing, they're still growing, so when they're first brought into the world, everything in their eyes is supposed to be safety and love and nurture and support, trust. They're supposed to have those things. So the minute that gets disturbed, per se, where there is trauma or there is violence and other things that are going on, they look at the world a completely different way. And that's how they grow and be conditioned to kind of engaging with other people. So if I can't get the love and support that I'm supposed to get in home, I don't know how to have that connection when I'm outside of the home. I don't even not have that connection inside of the home. So then that kind of affects them. children can either grow as they grow, or even in that moment they could exhibit some of the behaviors of the abuser, like we talked about previously, being aggressive, being controlling, kind of demanding, manipulative. Kids can be manipulative, believe it or not. Or then on the flip side, they can kind of take under some of those characteristics of the person who was the victim or the survivor. Feeling powerless and helpless, a little bit timid and shy, sometimes maybe clingy, or it really depends on the kid, but it has a huge impact on them.
Right. So sometimes it's like, from what I'm hearing you say, like if it's a young child, it could even affect their like development. Like they may not meet developmental milestones, and they may have attachment issues with their caregiver, which does have a big lasting impact further on. And I know we talk about the cycle of abuse, and so how you're mentioning that the children may pick up some of the behaviors of the abuser that could continue on throughout.
Oh, definitely.
Right. So for those of you just tuning in, you are watching Hotline 21 on CAN TV. My name is Kesha, and I'm here with Porscha. We're both from Connections for Abused Women and Their Children. Again, this is an interactive call-in show, so you are welcome to call 312-738-1060 if you have any questions for us. Just to give another little recap, our 24-hour hotline at Connections for Abused Women and Their Children is also always answered by a trained counselor advocate, and the phone number is 773-278-4566. All right. So we talked a little bit about how kids are impacted by domestic violence and how it can affect their development and how it may affect them in lots of different ways. What are things that we can do at CAWC? Like, what types of children's services can we offer? I heard you say you worked with a 4-year-old. Like, what types of things can you do with a 4-year-old?
A lot of play therapy. Lots and lots of it. So our services for children, it kind of, like I said, it range depending on the needs of the child. So a lot of it is play therapy, art therapy, just trying to do things that are more expressive. I realize that when you do things that are more expressive with them, and that's artsy in a sense, that they are able to open up a little bit more. They're able to talk more. For example, if you have a kid who's like, we're doing some painting or things like that, and as we're going through the process, I'll ask them, like, what made you choose this color instead of this color? And then they'll give you a whole story about why this color was the one that was chosen instead of that color. And then from there, you can kind of ask more probing questions to get a little bit deeper under the surface. And that's when they'll usually, kind of open up and share some of the things that has been going on, that are currently going on, some of their hopes for the future, and then you just kind of walk through that process with them, reassuring them, that they're not alone, that there are people out here that they can trust who are safe, and trying to show them what that trust and safety should look like, because it's something that was, taken away from them in essence, that they didn't have that. So I do individual services with the children there, and those are some of the things that we can do. We also provide group counseling for our kiddos. So we have support groups. So our support groups, Wednesdays are our Spanish-speaking support groups, and then Thursdays are our English-speaking support groups, and those are usually in the evenings from 5 to 7 every week. So while the parents are essentially in one room during their support group thing, I and other counselors sometimes are with the children in another room. So we'll do different activities. If it's around a holiday, we'll do a holiday activity and just kind of talk about, like, what's that like. For Mother's Day, they did Mother's Day crafts. They really loved it. Nice. Father's Day, some of them was like, yes, let's totally do it. And some of them was like, yeah, no, I'm good. So it really depends. And when it does get to the point that a kid's like, I don't want to do this. This is stupid. I don't want to participate. Then you just got to think outside the box and try to get them to do something else that can kind of relate.
Yeah. And so the good thing is, like, the services, even though they're group services, it sounds like they're still pretty individualized for each
Definitely.
person, which is
Definitely.
great. All right. So, as family trauma therapists, you work with a lot of kids and adolescents. What are some of the effects for children if they are child witnesses of domestic violence? I know we talked a little bit about this, but just to go a little more in depth.
Oh, definitely. So some of the effects that children tend to have because of the domestic violence is that, like I said, they will be acting out. A lot of times you'll get a kid who's maybe over developmentally, I think it's 4 or 5 years old, who is continuing to wet the bed. So usually sometimes people are like, why are you wetting the bed? Then they'll say, oh, I just had a bad dream, or I thought I was using the actual restroom, when in reality they're still experiencing some of that trauma from witnessing the domestic violence.
Could that also be like them like regressing in that
Definitely,
way? Yeah.
definitely. And then I'm glad you brought up regressing, because I do get parents a lot of times just like, all of a sudden she's acting like a baby and she's 5 right now. So with the regressing, that's when she felt, it could be that's when she felt the most safe and secure. So that's the time where she's like, I want to go back to this time when life was pretty much okay and that I can get that. And when now that things are different, they regress and they go back to that.
Got it. So that could be a sign for someone to look
certainly,
out for. Yes.
certainly. I know we spoke a little bit about the withdrawing and the isolating, so that's going to be something to look out for, especially if you know that it's a kid who usually always engages and then out of nowhere they've been to themselves. That's kind of concerning.
Yeah, so like those big changes in behavior. So, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. So so there's a lot of potential effects or signs that we can
definitely.
see, for those child witnesses. So if someone is a parent, they're a parent of a child who could potentially be experiencing some sort of trauma, or they are a parent who themselves maybe is a survivor of domestic violence. Does CAWC offer any services for, like, specifically for parents?
Oh, definitely. So similar to our children's services, we do provide, like I said, the support groups for our parents. We offer individual services for parents, as well as maybe sometimes they're like, I want to work on this with my kid, then I'll do a joint session with them. We have our DCFS classes, who are clients who are usually mandated by the courts, who have DCFS involvement and some DV.
So
we
for
can
people
offer
who
that.
might not know, what does DCFS stand for?
DCFS stands for the Department of Child and Family Services.
Okay.
And so if you have any involvement with that, chances are that the judge will kind of mandate you and or the family to maybe take these classes or receive some individual or some family counseling and things of that nature. So we also help with like referrals. So if there's people like, I don't know anywhere else to go, this is the only place that I know of. But for example, if we didn't have that particular service, we'll kind of help them out to figure
Find
out
another place
where
that
they
might
need.
be a good fit. Okay.
Yep.
Great. Perfect. So I know a lot of times we're working with the kids directly, or we're working with the parents directly, but often I hear from people who they have children in their lives that they're kind of just worried about. Like maybe they don't necessarily know that they've experienced domestic violence or witnessed domestic violence, but maybe they've seen some of those effects that you mentioned, like the aggression or the isolation or changes in behavior. So if someone has or thinks that a child that they know is in a dangerous situation, or could possibly be exposed to violence in the home, what are some ways that they can help?
Oh, certainly. I think with anything, just contact the police first and foremost, because as first responders, if that is the case, they'll get there first. They can investigate. They can do all those things. Our job isn't always to be the investigator. There's why there are people who have that kind of a role, but just being able to watch out for some of those warning signs. So if you notice that a kid is, like I said, starting to isolate themselves, or they're coming to school or wherever, kind of disoriented, their clothes are a little all over the place, they're not presenting as well, so that would be some of the signs where it's like, okay, this is concerning. Who do I contact? You can also contact DCFS, which is Department of Child and Family Services. That number is 1-800-25-ABUSE. So it's 1-800-252-2873. And if it's a kid that you have a really, really close relationship and you think that they might be harmed or in danger, you can create a safety plan with them. So something that they can do that'll help them get out of that.
Right. And I know you mentioned like DCFS, like in our role as people who work at CAWC, we are mandated reporters.
Absolutely.
So that means, like you said, we don't do investigation, but we would report
it.
Any suspected child abuse and neglect is always reported directly to DCFS, and they are the ones who do that full investigation and determine what next steps are needed. So it's always great to have that phone number, but I definitely agree that if there is active abuse or you think that something might be happening, it's always best to call the police to be safe.
Yes,
sure.
yes.
So we have a few more questions, but before we get to those, I'll show you CAWC's contact information one more time. So CAWC, again, is Connections for Abused Women and Their Children, and we offer counseling services. We have an emergency shelter, and we also offer legal advocacy and other support. We have a 24-hour hotline that's always available at 773-278-4566. And you can, again, also find information on our website. So we have just a few more questions. So we were talking about working with kids and working with caregivers. So would CAWC be available to help provide training for children or even for those teachers or caregivers who might want to learn more about domestic violence?
Definitely. So oftentimes we do, so not only do we provide a 40-hour domestic violence training at our agency, there are times that myself and other staff members who will go out to schools, will go out to different community agencies and provide that knowledge and that training, give them handouts, things that they can use, resources that they could have. That way, if they're not 40-hour trained, at least they have some knowledge of, what domestic violence is, how to be aware and observe for any signs of abuse that might be going on. And then as far as like for kids, it's just being able to talk with them, making sure that they understand what abuse is and what violence is, and just do some, I guess there are ways that teachers and other caregivers could provide, like screening, just asking questions, and then just being observant of their responses.
Yeah, so definitely. So CAWC provides a lot of community trainings throughout the year. Last year, we reached about 6,000 people through our trainings. For community agencies or schools, we would certainly be able to do those trainings for free as well.
Definitely.
So it's always always an option to reach out to CAWC if you are interested in something like that at your school or a place that that might work with kids or other people. So we have just a few minutes left, and I just wondered if you had any other tips maybe for parents or caregivers or teachers.
Oh, definitely. I think one of the most important things is just listening to them and being observant. You'll get a lot from just watching, whether it's body language, the appearance of their clothes and things of that nature. And just being able to, when you are listening, just give them undivided attention. Don't be texting or on the phone while they're trying to talk to you. Believe what they're telling you is true. I know a lot of times like, oh, it's just a kid. They don't know it. No. Kids are smart. They're very, very smart. So believe them the first time when they tell you that something is kind of going on. Providing them with a safe environment. If it's not something that you can personally do to give them that safe environment, just teaching them, some tools and tricks and things that they can do to be safe. So like we said, creating a safety plan with them. Sometimes kids have like security blankets and teddy bears and things like that. So if it's that, encourage them to use that to the best of their ability. Definitely do no more harm. So if you feel like something might do more harm to a child, you certainly want to do no more harm because that can lead to a whole ripple effect of things.
Right. So there's so much that can be done just
Oh,
by
yes.
listening to the child and just being
Yes.
available. And it sounds like that's something that's really important, and that
Absolutely.
it's a good tip for any caregiver or any person that works with kids. Okay.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for watching Hotline 21. Again, I'm Kesha Larkins. I'm the Associate Director at CAWC, and I'm here with Porscha Stevens, our HPOP Coordinator and Family Trauma Therapist. Just to give you the phone number one more time, CAWC's 24-hour hotline is 773-278-4566. Thank you, and please feel free to reach out to CAWC if you're interested in training, or if you or anyone that you know could benefit from the services that we offer. Thank you.